Hey guys, how's it going? Finally found some time this week to install my new R&D Stage 1 turbo. A couple more things I needed to get to complete the turbo was some nuts and studs. I had discovered that the reused stock factory exhaust housing, it all uses SAE thread, so this is a 3/8 coarse thread. I used 4 studs to attach the up pipe to it, and then 4 nuts to go with that. But I've discovered also that the threads here are metric, so when we attach the oil pedestal to the bottom of this, pick up some M8 by 1 1/4 pitch studs if you prefer, but I'm going to use M8 by 1 1/4 bolts to attach the oil pedestal there. Also, from last video I mentioned we had to do something about the intake here. It's 3.5 in diameter, so I picked up a silicone boot from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below for just a really cheap $5 3.5 inch silicone boot, and I got a clamp with that too as well. Alright, let's see what else. Let's talk about the oil pedestal. There were some modifications required for that. Let me walk over here and grab that real quick. Alrighty, so the modifications to the oil pedestal is to grind down this area right here on the front side of the pedestal, because when you go and bolt this on the bottom, there's a bolt right here that has to barely clear right here. I did a little too much grinding, but that's okay. You just have to grind more on this side than up here. That was my mistake, was I ground off too much up here. But focus on this area right here, and I'm going to go ahead and put it on, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So when I go put this on, make sure you have an O-ring that sits right here. I've got a regular black one. You got to get your hardware. For the life of me, I had to get some grease because the O-ring kept falling out of the bottom of the pedestal here. But now that stays. Let's go ahead and put it on. Alright, got the second one going in. Alright, once I get these snug, I'll show you what I'm talking about with the pedestal clearancing. So right here, it has to clear that bolt on the back of the turbine housing, sorry, the compressor housing. Without it being ground down, it cleared, but this wasn't correctly centered, and so you're going to have a bad seal for the oil drain. But when you ground down, I want to say 1/8 of an inch, no more than an 1/8 of an inch, it would be sufficient enough to clear that back bolt there. I decided to wrap the up pipe with some exhaust wrapping. I'll let you know if it clears everything or not. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll let you know. For all the national pipe threads, I used thread sealant so it doesn't leak oil, but this top one here was flared, so no requirement for sealant. Put the oil feed line out of the way here so we can install the turbo. Time to install the turbo, guys. I just want to point out a couple things before we go ahead and attempt to drop her in. The first one is you got to make sure you have an O-ring for the back of the pedestal here. If you don't get one of these put in, you are going to have a bad boost leak because the back of the manifold has a hole, and for the NA, the CDR attached to that hole. But for the turbo versions, this pedestal just blocks that hole off, and you gotta make sure you use an O-ring, otherwise it's going to leak. I'm going to put a little dab of RTV onto that, so that way it makes it easy to hold the O-ring while I install the turbo and don't have to worry about it falling off. And plus, I think RTV will help with additional sealing, and you just don't want a boost leak on the back of that. So Alrighty, so just a fine amount of RTV on that O-ring and it'll hold it in nice. So we're gonna go ahead and install this turbo with the exhaust elbow off for now, because I think it's a lot easier to put it in without this on it, and then put it on once everything is bolted up on the 2 bolts of the oil drain pedestal. Once the up pipe is slipped onto the Y piece on the turbo, and once you get the outlet of this compressor housing into the intake hat, and then we'll go in from behind and thread in the 5 bolts for this exhaust elbow. One cool little trick that I like to do is cut this very hard to reach, very hard to get around bottom bolt. What I do is I just cut a notch right here, and what you do is you put it on and use one of your bolt hardware and put it on and thread it in until it bottoms out, and then give it like a quarter turn to a half turn back out, and then just let it sit there, so that way when you go and put this on, you can just slide it down and then tighten the rest up once you put the other 4 on. And then when you take it off, it's easy to take the top 4 out, and all you gotta do is just reach down there with an 8mm 12-point small wrench and give this a quarter turn back, and then it'll slip right out. Just a cool little trick. Alrighty, so guys, I'm gonna go ahead and attempt and try to drop this thing in and try to get everything to button up just right. We'll have to rotate this, and we'll have to make sure the clocking of the compressor housing's correct, so that way the output of that housing will line up perfectly with this. Make sure you have your 2 oil drain pedestal bolts that attach to the back right here. There's 2, so there's 1 right there and 1 on the other side, and then slip the up pipe onto the slip Y joint piece way back down there. I'm gonna go ahead and dive right into it. Alrighty, I take that back. That was actually not as easy as I thought, but I do have some tips and tricks for you when you put it in. Put your intake hat on to the turbo first. It's a very tight fit. You get some WD-40 or some grease and slip it over that slip joint, because it's very, very tight, which I like because it'll seal pretty good under boost. So make sure you get that on, and then let's see here. I had to make sure this hat had its bolt in there first, and I also had to make sure the grommet down there for the oil drain pedestal wasn't getting pushed down, so I had to wiggle that bottom of the pedestal through the grommet and line that up along with the slip joint on the Y pipe and the up pipe, and line up the 2 back bolts. You got like 4 different things to worry about here when you try to drop this whole thing in together. This is how I did it. I don't know if there's an easier way to do it. That's why I'm making this video, so we can talk about it and I could tell you the tips and tricks that I did for the way I did it. But you could do it however which way you wanted to do it, but that's how I did it. Take the oil drain line and tap it in on the top there, and we'll bolt the downpipe elbow piece on now. Putting on the elbow downpipe now. Alright guys, got the oil feed line all hooked up, the boost tube hooked up, got the wastegate all hooked up, I got the throttle cable all hooked up. That is the R&D stage 1 drop-in turbo. Stay tuned for a first start. And I still gotta weld that 3-inch downpipe. I gotta take it over to a buddy's house, so that'll be for a different video, as well as the first startup and whatnot. So stay tuned. Alright, goodbye.